17th chapter of the book of Yechezkel. Vayidvar Adonai Lailei Mor Ben Adam Chud Chidau Mashol Mashal Al Beit Yisrael. So here's a riddle, a parable that you have to give to the house of Israel. V'amarta Kol Amar Adonai Elohim HaNesher HaGadol Gadol HaKanfayim Erech HaEver Malei HaNotza Asher Lo HaRikma Ba'el HaLevanon V'yikach Et Sameret HaAretz. So tell them, this is what God says: the great eagle with the great wings and the long pinions and the full plumage and the brilliant colors came to the Lebanon range and seized the top of the cedar. Who do we think that is? Sounds like it is Bavel. Bavel is the coming down from Lebanon, and is coming down right from the north, and is the one that is grabbing everything. Et Rosh Yenikotav Katav Vayeveu El Eretz Canaan Be'ir Rochlim Samo. He plucked off the topmost, the highest places. He carried off the land of traders and set it in a city of merchants. So he's on his way to Canaan. Vayikach mizera aretz vayineu b'sadeh zara kach al mayim rabim saftsefa samo. He took some of the seed of the land and planted a fertile field. He planted it and set it like a willow besides the waters. Vayitzmach, and it grew. Vayihi legefen sorachat, and it became a spreading vine. Shiflat koma, but it was shafel. It was short, it was stunted. Lifnot dileotav elav v'sharashav tav yiyu v'tihi legefen v'taas badim v'tishalach poroot, and it became a vine, and branches grew out of it. He intended that its twigs should turn towards him, and that its roots should stay under him. But there was another great eagle with great wings and also full plumage. And this vine now bent its roots in its direction and its twigs toward him, that he might water it more. El Sadeh Tov El Mayim Rabim Hi Shitula Lasot Anaf Vilasate Peri Liot Lagefen Aderen. That was planted in good soil besides abundant water, so that it might grow branches and produced and be a noble vine. And more Ko Amar Adonai Elohim Titzlach. And God said, will it thrive? Halo et Shorasheha ye not take. Will it not tear out its roots? Vet Pirya Yikoseis V'yavesh Kol Tarfeit Simcha Tivash V'lo Vizroa Gedola V'amrav L'Masaoto Tam Mishorasheha. Right, want to tear out its roots and rip out its crown, and everything will wither. It will wither despite the strong and the mighty army to remove it. V'inei shetula hatitzlach. And suppose it is moved, will it thrive? Halo kigat baruach hakadim tivash yavesh al arugot simcha tivash. When the east wind strikes, it shall wither upon the bed where it is growing. And at least the way, right, we talk about Bavel, and Bavel's coming down, but Bavel is attacking Israel, Jerusalem, who was right to the Jewish people, who are the Geffen, who are this thing that was planted, and they were planted in good, with good water by God in a rich land. But now they're being plucked out, they're being moved. Will it continue to stay alive? Will it dry out as they are moved from their home into exile to another place? Vahi Devar Elai Lemor. Another prophecy. Emor Nalevei Tameri. Tell the rebellious people. We've had Mar and Matok earlier in the book, and a lot of times Jewish people are referred to in this book as a Beit Meri, a rebellious people. Halo Yudatem Ma'ela. Do you not know what these things mean? Emor Hineva Melech Bavel Yerushalayim Vikachet Malkav Yetzarev Ve'aveotam Elav Bavela. The king of Babylon came to Jerusalem and carried away its king and its officers and brought them back with him to Babylon. And we know that's the king Yechonia, who was taken in the year 597. And the prophecies of Yechezkel happened in the aftermath of that, before the destruction, all the prophecies that we've had up to this point. He took the seed of the royal seed and made a covenant with him. And imposed an oath on him, and he carried away the nobles of the land. Right? So the second king is the king. Sorry, still tired from my trip. The king is Tzidkiyahu, who is the last of the kings of Israel. That's the one who he places his puppet, who eventually is going to rebel against him, which is going to cause the Babylonians to destroy Jerusalem. Liot mamlachash falah. He wanted the kingdom to be weak. Levilti hit nase, to be a humble kingdom, not to exalt itself, not to think of themselves as great. L'shmor et brito le'omda, but keep his covenant. and that would allow them to remain. Follow the dictates of the great kingdom of the Babylonians, the great Nesher who has come down, and you can remain. Vayim Rodbo. But what did they do? They rebelled. Lishloach malachav Mitzrayim latetlo susim v'amrav. They went to Egypt to get horses and to get an army as part of this coalition that we've talked about many times against the Babylonians. Egypt was the great regional power. Israel was one of the smaller ones, and Gaza and some of the other ones joined together in an attempt to defeat the Babylonians. But as we learned in the book of Yirmiyahu, as we learned in the book of Melachim, and as Yechezkel has told us numerous times, it's not going to work. Right? Submission is what Yirmiyahu eventually tells the Jewish people, and they don't. They rebel. Haitzlach, we're in 15. Will it succeed? Will they escape? Can they break a covenant and escape? And of course, underneath all of this is a covenant with Bavel that is first being listened to, right? When Nebuchadnezzar placed Tzidkiyahu as the king, as his puppet king to this weak kingdom who's not going to be able to rebel. That's a covenant that they're breaking. But of course, it's indicative of a different covenant, the covenant that the Jewish people are supposed to have with God. As I live, says God, in the very homeland of the king who made him king, whose oath he flouted and whose covenant he broke right there in Babylon, he shall die. So to Pharaoh b'milchama b'shfoch solov not dayek shot rabot. He thinks he's going to go to Egypt, and Pharaoh's going to give him a big army, and they're going to be able to fight. Pharaoh's not going to give him a great army. There are not going to be many troops. And when the city of Jerusalem is when the siege is laid to it, when the mounds are thrown up against it to destroy many lives, they're not going to have the Egyptian army. Uvaza Allah lahafer brit v'ine natan yado v'cholei la'asa lo yimalet. He went against the pact and he broke a covenant. He gave his promise and did all the things, he shall not escape. And again, you think of the double layer of this in terms of the relationship with Bavel that the kings and that the Jews are given into in the year 597, and of course, more significantly, the relationship with God. Lachein kol amar Adonai Elohim. God says, as I live, I will pay him back for going against my brit, breaking my covenant. So what was underneath now becomes most obvious and interesting to me, where we have the words chayani, right? That's similar to the language Eliyahu gave. Eliyahu used language like that. I swear by God, as God lives, when he first appears, and that's language that then is taken up by his student Elisha after Eliyahu's the ascent in the chariot of fire. And so here it's talking about the Brit, the covenant, and that was Eliyahu's great statement to the Jewish people over and over again to God, was that they broke the covenant with God. Ufarasti, we're in verse 20, Alav rishti v'nitpas b'metsudati v'evietu bavela v'nishpatti ito sham ma'alo asher malbi. I will spread out my net over him, and he will be caught in my trap, and I will carry him to Babylon and enter with him into judgment because of the sins that he committed against me. That kol mivrachav b'chol agafav l'acherev yipolu v'anashrim l'chol ruach yifares v'datem ki ani Adonai dibarti. And all the fugitives of all the battles will fall by the swords, and those who remain will scatter in all directions. And then you will know that I am God, and this is my decree. I have spoken. We've seen that sadly over and over again. It's not through great wonders and miracles, but in these chapters over and over again, we're told about the horrors that are going to happen. And it's because of the horrors that finally the Jewish people will realize that this is the word of God, and God lives in as well. And it's because of their behavior that these things keep happening. Ko amar Adonai Elohim v'lakachti ani mitzameret ha'erez harama v'natati miroshi nikotav rach ektof v'shatalni ani al har gavoa v'talul. So God says, and I in turn will take and set in the ground a slip from the lofty top of the cedar. I will pluck a small twig from the tip of the crown, and I will plant it on a tall, towering mountain. Bahar marom Yisrael eshtalenu. I will plant it in Israel's lofty hills. V'nasa nafasa peri v'yala erez adir, and it will sprout, and it will become a great branch. And every bird and every feather will take shelter under it. Then all the trees of the field will know. Ani Adonai hishbalti eitz gavoa, higbiti eitz shafal, hovashti eitz lach, vifrachti eitz yavesh. Ani Adonai dibarti va'asiti. And unlike many of the chapters that we've had up to now in Yechezkel, this is a chapter that hereby ends with a hope. What does God say? Right? I'm going to take this little twig and plant it on top of Bavel. This little twig being what was formerly this great vine, this great people, my people who were in rich soil. I'm going to I'm going to plant them again. And I'm going to take what looks dry and bring it back to life. I'm going to take what looks shafel, what looks weak and depressed and diminished and small of stature, and allow it to once again be great. And in that, once again, you will know that I am God. And so here we have a real transition, at least in this chapter, from the knowledge of God is to Bnei Yisrael, is from the destruction to now moving to the knowledge of God comes not from destruction, but from the rehabilitation, from God bringing back the Jewish people. And that's always the way I think of, in a sense, the second bracha of Shemona Esrei, the bracha that's supposed to be about Mechaye Meitim, Tchiat HaMeitim. It's supposed to be at the resurrection of the dead, but ultimately it's not just about the resurrection of the dead. Resurrection of the dead is this massive miracle that, except for I guess when Eliyahu did it and when Elisha did it a couple of times, we really don't see. But think, I'm looking out of my car window right now and I see the trees. Over the last month in Colorado, 90% of the leaves have fallen. The trees look dead, one could say. And come April, the trees will be alive. The yellow grass will be green again. That idea of a rebirth. And so God is saying here, you will know that I am God because there will be this rebirth. You will start again. It looks like you've been destroyed and you'll know that I am God. But later you and everybody else will know I'm God, because who else could have taken something that looks so dead and brought it back to life? This tree which looks desolate and destroyed and empty, and you look at it and there are no leaves. In 6 months from now, whatever it might be, 8 months from now, whatever it might be, it will be full of leaves and beautiful, its plumage and etc., etc. And so this chapter, unlike many of the other chapters, ends with this hope that the Jewish people will return to Bavel, something we'll see from Bavel to Israel, something we'll see much more about later on in this book.